Welcome back to the 12th Man podcast. Tricky show, and I trying to do, but we're here. We'll give it our best go. I mean, it's been a frantic weekend of football. Great to have a 1-1. I mean, there was a queues on your arm when people looking at it. I think everyone was looking to say they have their butt with me tonight. Fun. Have a bit of a laugh at me, but that's football and that's the banter. But I mean, I says before the weekend that the last game I was at was the craziest game I was ever at. The two late goals from Spurs,
I
but I
think
mean,
I topped it.
I don't think I'll ever be at a game like it was last night
Uh,
again. I
I
mean,
was as a
absolutely. I mean,
as
it
a
was chaotic. Sorry,
as
go
a
ahead.
neutral watching it, like it felt like every 5 minutes there was something happening.
Well, that's exactly. I think the neutral loved it. I'll sort of speak a wee bit on it, what it was like for me in the stadium. We're all going on. I'll sort of speak about that in a few minutes' time. But we are going to be looking back at Monday Night Football. Chelsea won in 4-1 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We're also going to be looking at Liverpool's 1-1 draw with Luton. A game everyone expected and they won. In the end, they scrambled a late goal to get a draw. We'll also be reflecting on that. Another pretty busy game for VAR on Saturday, Newcastle Arsenal. Obviously, Arteta's rant. Was he right? Was he wrong? We're also going to be looking at as has VAR had a breaking point now. I mean, more managers, players, fans are really really annoyed. Are people loathing for it to go back to how it was without VAR and maybe accepting the referee's decisions? We're going to come on to that as well. We'll look back the rest of the weekend's games, including United's 1-0 win over Fulham. And then we'll look ahead to the Champions League, Europa League games. Obviously, at the minute, Newcastle are 1-0 down with 28 minutes to go. So we'll let you know if there's any score update on that. But Newcastle are pushing pretty hard. I think they need to get some sort of result if they're going to stay in the Champions League. And then we'll finish off by looking ahead to this weekend's games, the final games before the last international break of 2023. So, Owen, delighted to have you on with again. I know you're excited to do this one because, as mates would say, Spurs' bubble has been burst. So, I mean, how are you feeling?
I mean, like as I said, for a neutral, it was a mental game. Obviously, I was texting you during it, but it was probably the best game of football I watched this season. Like not in terms of quality of football, just the madness of it. Like
Well, I seen today a few articles that people had been writing, like journalists, and like they were ranking their top 10 sort of famous games. I mean, that's going to be remembered. I mean, everyone remembers the Battle of the Bridge. That probably topped it last night. In terms of what was going on. I mean, there was 5 goals in the game, 5 goals disallowed, 2 red cards, a number of VAR checks. I mean, I suppose what I'll do is you can sort of give it to me from how your view on how it was as watching it on TV. But for me, watching it on the game, it really was very difficult to know what was going on. And this is the sort of grey lines that VAR has caused with match day going fans. All that we see is on the screen. First of all, the referee will stop the game, and
yeah,
it might take a minute before anything's happening because it'll come up on the screen potential penalty or checking offside or potential red card, but it doesn't show you anything until the VAR checks over, and it just shows you like a freeze frame so it's very hard to even know was it the right decision, was it the wrong decision. So I suppose I know VAR's been on a few years, but that was kind of the first game I was at where there was numerous VAR checks. I mean, I think in that first half it was 57 minutes, but only the ball was in play for only 23 minutes. So, I mean, incredible, really. And so, I mean, how did you see it from your point of view? I mean, you obviously had the advantage of replays and stuff, but I mean, was it like a game where you sort of forgot about the football? There was so much happening.
that's what I mean. It that when I said there, like it was one of the maddest games of football I've watched, and none of it was to do with the football. If that makes sense, it was just the madness of it was such a stop start game. I mean, for the first 10, 15 minutes, Spurs were all over them, and if Spurs had kept 11 men on the pitch, it would have been a different game, I think. But from my point of view, like I think Udogi was very lucky to stay on the pitch before he got his red card, and Romero was very lucky to stay on the pitch, and I think Reece James was very lucky to stay on the pitch. So there was so many decisions to get through that it was just a mad game of football to watch. It was fun for the neutral, but I would say you being in the stadium, it was a hectic night. Like.
It was hectic. I mean, I have to say the atmosphere before the game was bouncing. The plus everyone was confident, and I mean, as you point out, the way we started the game, I have to say it's probably the best I've seen Spurs play in a number of years against, I know Chelsea have been struggling, but they still have a lot of good players, and their midfield was getting pulled apart. I mean, you look at Chelsea and you think their midfield's probably their strongest area of their team with Fernandes and Caicedo on there, but they couldn't get near the Spurs midfield in them first 15 minutes, you say. And I mean, we're inches away from being 2-0 up, and I think it's one of them things. And I think Son should have been onside. He shouldn't have let himself go offside. But I think it's one of them things. If that goes on, we're talking about a completely different game, because I don't think it all leads to what happened. And I don't make excuses, because there is no excuse for what happened. But I mean, them first 15, the football they were playing, personally, maybe I'm biased, but I thought it was the best 15 minutes of football I've seen any team play this season. It was that good, the way they moved the ball from front to back. And I mean, I thought Brennan Johnson was superb on that left side. Reece James was having a torrid time. And at that point, I just couldn't see anything harder than Spurs won the game. It was crazy.
It's just to go on to Brennan Johnson. He's had really bad luck in his first two Spurs starts. He started the North London derby, went off injured, and he started this game and went off because someone got sent off. So it's not been the best of starts for his career. But as you say, for me, I agree with you. Spurs just blitzed them in the first 15 minutes, and if Son just had a hell of a run, it would have been 3-0. Would have been a different game. But as you say, then the moments of madness happened. Romero, it was first it was Udogie, and I think when that challenge went in, the whole game just changed. I
mean, for the 5 seconds of Spurs being 2-0 up in our heads, I mean, everyone was jumping around, and I mean, there was a couple of people were saying, we're going to do it. I think there was that feeling that this was going to be the statement that Spurs were going to put out, and they were going to go on and challenge, because the football we were seeing, it was something so special compared to what we've had the last few years. And I mean, there was that part of you that thought, if we keep this team fit, because it's probably the first time we've got our 11 best players on a football pitch. You can maybe argue Bentancur is one of them, but the way Sarr's playing at the minute, I thought he was outstanding last night. That was our strongest 11 with Johnson back in. And I mean, they were the flow, the way. I mean, we look at some teams like Arsenal at the minute. Maybe even we could touch on Liverpool a wee bit, but Spurs just looked very fluid last night, and that was what was impressing me. But in the end, it wasn't to be. Spurs don't get the second goal, and not long after that, you say, Doggy is very, very fortunate. I mean, I was listening to Dermot Gallagher today. He said the only reason he stayed on the pitch is because there's no contact. Sterling pulls his leg away, or else it's a red. But again, I still think,
if he makes contact with Sterling, that's a leg breaker.
Exactly, and I think the recklessness that should have been punished. Spurs get away with it, and then Romero, for some reason, again decides they swipe at somebody. I mean, we've seen him do this before. We're seeing a lot of this sort of players leaving one on somebody, and what they're getting away with because of this. It's being labelled as petulance, not like violent conduct. He thinks that needs changing now, because it's almost encouraging players. They can maybe strike out, like we've seen with Bruno Guimaraes and we've seen with Romero. They can sort of strike out and get away and get away with it still.
Reece James too last night, I thought was very lucky. Still, he elbowed somebody. I can't remember who, but it was somebody in the Spurs.
I think the problem with that one is it's very hard to prove it was intentional. But again,
well, I agree. It definitely needs to be changed from petulance to, because there's going to be one time where a player gets a really bad injury and they can't put that down to petulance. That's just out of control tackling. And as we'll get on to it as we talk about the Arsenal game, Havertz should have been sent off in that one. Bruno Guimaraes should have been sent off. It's just, it's every time. It seems to be every time me and you do the podcast, we're always talking about refereeing decisions or VAR or.
And then there was obviously in the midst of all that stuff with Doggy and Romero, it was in the same spell that Sterling had a goal chalked off. I think rightly, it had his hand. There was and that was actually the one decision when it happened. I couldn't understand what was taking so long, because I says this is definitely handball. I had a great view of it, but it was because they were checking for the red cards. I mean, that one gets chalked off, and the game then seemed to turn on that moment. I mean, just right after that, Romero makes another mistake trying to play it from the back, and then he does what separates the world-class defenders from the good defenders is when they make a mistake, they don't lose their composure. Romero gives the ball away, and he then goes chasing. He actually leaves his position. Then he comes running back across, and that's when he takes Fernandes out. And I mean, the craziest thing about it is it's his international teammate that he could possibly have really, really hurt him.
Which would affect Argentina.
What's that?
Then that would affect Argentina.
And that would affect Argentina, and we know he loves playing for Argentina. But I mean, he goes on with his studs, and it's a horrible, horrible tackle. I mean, he knows exactly, in my opinion, what he's doing.
I seen people saying it wasn't a red card because he got the ball, but then Curtis Jones got the ball, and that was a red card.
For me, it was a red card, no complaints. And it was crazy because Spurs were in total control, and it was really unnecessary. And I mean, I remember watching the 15 minutes, and I'd never seen Chelsea players kick a ball out of play so often. They were so rattled. If someone had told me something's going to happen in terms of somebody losing their head, I would have thought it would have been a Chelsea player because they were under so much pressure. But Spurs just completely self-destructed with that Romero incident, and it became a very different game after that.
Does that come down to, like, for you? Does that come down to mentality of Spurs not being used to being in this position, or is it just stupidity from Romero?
The problem you've got is it's Romero's fourth red card in 70 odd games. So
I seen a thing before we came on air. Romero gets a red card every 18 minutes for Spurs. It's or something like that. It was a mad stat. Like but he sort of put that out of his game so far this season, and
that's the strangest thing because it has been a lot camera this season, but I suppose it was always in there, and I think he was chasing that ball he gave away, and he ended up doing something very, very silly. And I mean, I think that has to be a big learning curve for him now, because I mean, we know he's a good defender, and like Jamie Carragher spoke with him last night, saying he really, really likes him, but how many more times can Spurs let him away with this now? Because it's happened before, and it could happen again. I mean, do you think if it happens one more time, that's when the fans will start to turn? Because I have seen more fans on Twitter saying that, Romero's cost us again, but our fans are saying, no, you need to stick by him. But I think the more it happens, we seen, like, remember that situation Arsenal had with Xhaka? He kept doing this when he was getting sent off in big games. I mean, where do you stand on it with Romero?
It's a thing, like, it's part of his game. You're not going to change him as a defender at this point in his career. It's sort of that. I know we're talking about Xhaka, but it's sort of that South American. They always have a bit of bite in them, but a steal in them. And if you take that out of his game, he'll get a yellow card here and there. He'll get a couple of red cards, but he's a top quality defender. And I think if he wasn't on the Spurs team, he would struggle.
And I mean, as crazy as the game was at that stage, we even had something even more crazy then happen in the second half. Udogie gets sent off. I think he was very unfortunate because if you actually look at it, if Sterling plays the pass right, the player's clean free, but he actually passes it to Udogie and it bounces off him, and then he dives on to try and win the ball, and it's a second yellow card, and it's just I think where Romero was reckless and that's on his game. I think Udogie was just slightly unlucky. And then that lack of experience, he dived on. Whereas maybe if he was a bit older,
wee bit of an experience on his game, just
wee bit of an experience. Because I mean, I think he's a top player. I mean, he was brilliant down that left side with Johnson linking up. But I mean, Spurs' setup was causing Chelsea all sorts of problems because the midfield packed with the two fullbacks tucking in, and it left Kulusevski and Johnson out wide in the touchline, and they absolutely stretched Chelsea. And Chelsea were just getting played through. And at that point, you were thinking, what was the score going to be? Because I mean, I was thinking this could be a cricket score because it was all Tottenham. But we then see something that I've never ever seen in football before. When a team goes down to 9 men, they tend to be more compact. They tend to try and make it difficult, like Liverpool did against Spurs. But Ange says, "No, stuff this. We're going to play, and we're going to play our football still." And they ended up playing with like a back seven all across the halfway line. And Son trying to press from the front with the two wide players, trying to press as well. And I mean, Spurs were still in the game until the 75. It was 2-1 right up. The second goal was on Chelsea's second goal in the 75th minute. But then it was 2-1 until the 94th minute, and Spurs had missed. Well, they had the Bentancur header, they had the Dyer offside goal, and then they had the Son chance as well. So I mean, it could have got them a draw, but in the end, I mean, they were absolutely shattered. I mean, Son could hardly walk at the end, and Chelsea picked through them for the third and fourth. I mean, it was brave, but do you think it was very, very naive?
I texted you last night and said it was very naive. It is brave, and you have to sort of applaud him. Like, he doesn't change his style, but like, if you do, I know he's ended up losing 4-1 anyway, but if it wasn't for Cario, it could have been 6, 7, 8, or 9. And if you do that against Man City, say he's go down to 10-9 against Man City, it would be a cricket score. So I think he do. It's obviously not going to happen. And it's a very rare occurrence that you go down to 9 men in a game, as we've sort of both figured out this season.
Yeah.
But I think for them situations, you have to adapt your style.
Calvin saying he doesn't understand the praise. If the likes of Ten Hag played that back seven, he'd be crucified in the media. Ange gets praised because the media loves him. I get that, Callum, but I think because Spurs are going so well, it's hard to question his tactics when it's been working all season. I think with Ten Hag it's different because they've been struggling, but it was slightly naive. But I kind of think if you look at it from a Liverpool point of view, they never got out of their final third against Spurs when they done with a 9 men, and they ended up conceding a free own goal at the end. But there's an argument they say if they hadn't had everyone back in the box, maybe that OG doesn't happen. But then you seen the opposite last night where one pass and Chelsea were free. And I think for a while it was. I think for a while it was difficult for Chelsea because I don't think they had ever come up against something like that before, where a team had 7 players across their halfway line.
I thought they were very poor up until they scored their second goal.
And I mean, Ange just says it doesn't matter how many players he's got, he'll have a go. And I mean, he stuck to his guns. I mean, the Spurs fans, you know, I mean, I've never seen a Spurs team beat 4-1 at home by a rival and be applauded off the pitch. I mean, the fans were still singing at the end of the game. You wouldn't have knew it was Spurs were losing the game. And I mean, I suppose that's the feel good factor around. I mean, do you think that that's in a way because of how well Spurs have been doing that? Almost like the Spurs fans are brushing off at the feet last night as if they say, well, we'll go again next week. They're just enjoying it that much.
I suppose, like, with all the stuff Spurs have been through in the last 18 months, losing Kane, losing Conte, their sporting directors going to prison or something. It's something like that. But there is a feel-good factor around Spurs at the minute, which annoys me. Oh, Dortmund have just went 2-0 up there.
Well, thanks for the update. 2-0 Dortmund, and that would be curtains.
As I was saying, it's a feel good factor around Spurs, and you know what, the fans are just riding the wave, and a wee bit of a bubble burst last night, but I think the biggest thing for Spurs is the injuries coming out of that game. You seen Van de Ven. It looked like he actually tore his hamstring.
We'll come on to the injuries on in a few minutes' time, but I think that is a massive concern, like you said. Jared Dillon's on there. I mean, he told everyone Spurs was going to batter Chelsea, and Nicholas Jackson couldn't score in Amsterdam. He says, and he scores a hat trick last night. Chelsea were lucky last night. Nothing but respect for Ange and the 9 players that finished the game, and they wouldn't have beat us if Romero and Udogie hadn't lost their heads. I agree, Jared, and we're going to come on to that because I mean, one thing Spurs have been accused of lacking under previous managers has been that lack of character. I mean, that's the one thing that you seen last night. Even with 9 men, the heads didn't drop. They still, even up to that 94th minute, I think everyone in the crowd and the players, they still sensed that there was something there for them in the game. I mean, they had chances. I mean, I've never really seen that where a team down to 9 men still creating chances. I mean, and I think that for all the negatives, there's a lot of positives in the performance. So, I mean, do you think Spurs are turning the corner on their Ange? That they, there's signs there that he could maybe take them back to they were when they were with Pochettino?
I mean, like, if this was under Conte and Spurs went 1-0 down, I think the whole thing would just capitulate. I know he's lost 4-1 the end up last night, but I agree with you.
I think the stadium would emptied if it hadn't been Conte.
The fans, like, I've never, as an opposition fan, just a neutral watching it, I've never seen any real fans like applauding their players off the pitch after losing 4-1 to a rival, especially Pochettino being in charge. So, as I said before, the feeling around Spurs is different. And as to the question of Ange can take Spurs back to where they were, all signs are saying that he can at the minute. But it's the big test for me now is how Spurs react against Wolves.
Exactly. Do you think we're going to learn more about the character on Saturday? Lunchtime kickoff away at Wolves, who will make it difficult?
I actually think that'll be a really tough game now for Spurs, especially as we get on to the injuries that they have. I think Van de Ven's going to be a big loss, and it's looking like from what I've seen on Twitter, like he's going to be out for a couple of months at least. And I don't know about Madison's injury. I haven't heard much about that.
I mean, for Spurs moving forward, I mean, you can't just completely forget about the game, but I mean, when you're planning ahead, I mean, you think Spurs fans should cling to the way they started the game because, I mean, I think in big games before, prior to the season, Spurs could be playing well and they go and play a good side or a top team or one of the big teams. I know Chelsea would maybe be considered a top team at the moment with their form, but they still are one of the big teams. I mean, and they would fold. They would completely not turn up. They've turned up in every big game this season they've played on. I mean, I really do. I mean, I don't know what the score would have been if we had if we had to put Chelsea away in them first 15, 20 minutes. I mean, so
Yeah.
you think that's the positive for Spurs when you get everyone back fit again, that they're going to have a really strong side?
I like as you said at the start of the show, that was the first time Spurs had their full starting 11 out. Like they're the one that you would expect to start week in, week out, and Bentancur's there. But Sarr's been one of the best midfielders in the league this season. But has been great. So if I was a Spurs fan, like I would be happy once I get all them players back that we definitely mount a challenge for at least a top three finish. I would say.
I mean, the one player that keeps on surprising me is the goalkeeper. I mean, this
No,
boy looks like a real top find, doesn't he?
he was, and I was after the Brentford game. I thought he was a calamity too. But I seen on Sky Sports last night. It's him and Allison have the exact same save percentage so far this
He's very
season.
similar to Allison. He was very quick off his line last night.
Yeah, he actually, obviously Allison for me is the best keeper there is at the minute. But he has very similar traits to Allison. Like as you say, he was very quick off his line, and as I said before when we were just starting, I think if it wasn't for him last night, it could have been 6, 7, 8.
I had it in the back of my head. It was one of them nights that eventually he was going to get one of them wrong, and we were going to be down to 8 men. We having to send Eric Dyer in the nets. I mean, it was that kind of night. He felt that he could definitely get one wrong.
Yeah. I like these wee dance move there when Mudryk stood on him. He did a wee flip on him.
I mean, you mentioned it, Owen. I mean, injuries. I mean, I always fear injuries, and I think every Spurs fan did. But they have basically your entire defense wiped out in one game. I mean, first of all, the red card to Romero, that's a 3-game ban. Udogie will miss 1 game. I think we can cope with that. But the problem is we've also got this injury to Van de Ven, and I mean, this looked horrible. As hamstring injuries go, this looks pretty serious. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of people, one of them being sports scientist, and they reckon it's a snapped hamstring, and that will be at least 3 to 4 months out. I mean, we'll probably not know more for a few days, but I think it's unlikely he plays again this side of Christmas. I think you're looking at January, possibly February.
And even
Just on Van de Ven. Sorry? Go ahead. Sorry.
Even when he comes back in, you don't know how he'll react. He might get a recurrence of the injury, like so. You don't know.
That's it. But I mean, just on Van de Ven, how big of an impact do you think I'll have in Spurs this season? Because with the way Spurs play with that high line, he's
very quick,
and he's been virtually unbeatable in games. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen too many players, or I can't even think of one player that's dribbled past him or ran past him. So I mean, how damaging will that be to Spurs this season?
I mean, you only have to tell, as you say, the Spurs play a high line, and can you play that way, Eric Dyer? Like, because he is slow, and Mickey Van de Ven he can keep up with anyone, it seems like. And I was very disappointed when Liverpool weren't going in for him. Obviously, before Spurs got him, I didn't know much about him, but once I've seen how he settled on Spurs, I've been thinking, wait, and Liverpool won there. Him beside Van Dijk would have been a top quality like backline. But as for Spurs, it is. I think it's probably the biggest injury you could get outside of Madison, but that injury doesn't look too serious.
I think the Madison one looks more of a precaution. I think he'll be okay, and if he is missing, it'll be maybe 1 game and back after the break. But
and obviously, Richarlison come out today and says he's going to be.
It looks like he could be injured as well, but I'm not too with everything that's going on. I'm not too sure Spurs fans will be too worried about him being injured. But then again, maybe that's me being a little bit unfair to him. But the Van de Ven one for me is, as you say, I mean, as injuries go, he was one of the players you really didn't want to lose, and I mean,
it would be.
It's one of them things. Every time something seems to be going well for Spurs, something seems to happen. I mean,
it's like
are they a cursed club?
I don't, I don't know. I don't know about cursed because there's a lot of clubs in worse positions. But like as I was saying there, it's like a snowball effect. He's got the red card, and Van de Ven snapped his hamstring. Who Madison went off, so it was just sort of it was like a domino effect. Once one thing
Mm.
happened, it came along like buses.
And look, I'm not going to complain about it too much because these things happen. But I mean, like I told you and the rest of the Liverpool fans that watch this podcast, that after we got that bit of luck against you, it will swing around again and we will get a bad day. And in the end,
Oh,
I think our day was even more worse because of the players we've lost out of the game. It wasn't just one game in terms of points. We
like to
seem to have
me,
really suffered.
that would be like Liverpool losing Salah to me. Like
Well,
if we,
Salah, Van Dijk, maybe
uh,
that's the kind of level. But I mean, it's right you point out about Dyer having to come on now and that high line because my dad actually pointed this out to me in the game, and at one point Dyer runs across the Ange Postecoglou during the game, and obviously we don't know what was said, but if you had to guess, you would think that he was probably mentioning, look, this high line's crippling us, because it was Dyer and Højbjerg playing centre back, so they aren't the fastest, they aren't the kind of players that are going to make up ground. So I
do you
mean,
think that'll be
do you
your
think?
centre back against Wolves?
Well, that's what I'm saying. How do you think? Do you think Ange will react to maybe what he's got now? He might drop off a wee bit, or do you expect him
Nah,
to employ the same tactics?
like if he doesn't drop off when he's went on the 9 men, like so, I can't see him changing much against Wolves. And
But the argument you could have for the 9 men is I think there's a real case for once it went the 9 men, he probably had it in his head the game was done and we weren't going
yeah,
to be because of how we play.
I
It was
mean,
almost like a free hit. I mean, going away to Wolves 11v11 and the game starting 0-0 is a
yeah,
different game. So we've got more to lose in that game if you get me. So I
yeah,
think
I
he
agree.
might
I
be a bit
agree.
because he doesn't strike me as a reckless manager. I mean, I remember when he was appointed, people were saying Spurs is going to be involved in basketball games, and to be honest, that has been the first basketball game I've watched, and it's because
Yeah,
we were only 9 men. Every hour game, we've been pretty sound defensively, and it's been tactically planned. No, it's not just been through together, and we'll score more goals than you, and that's how we're going to play. But so, I mean, you would expect them to adapt slightly, wouldn't you?
I don't know. I can't see him changing much. It all depends on who are your front centre backs at the minute. Just Dyer, and
He's got a
obviously
massive problem at left back too because
Ben Davis is injured, doesn't he? He was
because
injured.
well he's injured and Young's injured, but I think he's going to have to play until Romero comes back. Sorry, until Doggy comes back. And we're really stuck at the back. We have no Romero and Van de Ven. He'll have to play Emerson Royale and Eric Dyer centre back. I'm not sure who he's going to play left back.
That'll be rough against Man City.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Romero's not going to be back to after Man City, so
Yeah,
that Man City game is going to be
it's
extremely tough.
it's just we were just saying to you before we went on how many points this team's going to get, and shows you can never predict. You can never
No,
predict football.
this is why we love football. It's impossible to
Yeah.
predict. I mean, we'll have a word on Chelsea because it was a big one for them. But I mean, if you were a Chelsea fan watching that, would you be concerned that one how much they were second best in them first 15, 20 minutes, how Spurs were playing, and then even with 9 men, it took a long time, and it wasn't like a Spurs Liverpool where they had to break Spurs down. It was one pass on behind, and they couldn't even get that right until later in the game. So I mean, should Chelsea fans be worried that it's what happened last night? It's not going to be that favorable for them every week. So, what would you be
It's
thinking if you were a Chelsea fan?
I would be concerned, like, because as we've said numerous times already, like the first 15 minutes, Spurs blitzed them. One ball they went behind, they could have been 2-0 down. And I even think once Spurs went down to 9 and 10, like nine or 10 and 9, sorry, um, they uh they didn't know where to break these down. Like the amount of times they were getting called offside was infuriating for me as a neutral. And once they figured out how to break these down, that was it. Like, but I just think they're a very poor side, and they obviously got Spurs on a bad night for Spurs. But I wouldn't be singing from the rooftops if I was a Chelsea fan. No,
Well, they were last night. Tell you that.
I can imagine. Like,
Uh, I mean, let's look back on Super Sunday. Diaz on the media for obviously reasons outside of football is far, and that he still hasn't been released yet. I believe is that correct?
not that I've heard. No,
No, so he's still in captivity. And I mean, he comes off the bench and scores. Well, I mean, it was quite fortunate, but if anyone deserved a bit of fortune, it was him. The ball hits
Yeah.
his shoulder and looks over the goalkeeper. And I mean, in the end, looking at this weekend's results, we are still losing and Spurs losing. That point now doesn't look as bad as what it may have done on Sunday. And I mean,
Well,
what does
I
it
was
say
saying, do
about
you think?
3-1? But I mean, what does it say?
I
What
was.
does it say about Diaz's character?
I mean, they go through that, and Klopp said himself it wasn't like it was up to Diaz if he wanted to be on the bench and play. So he probably, I know it's tough to say, but he probably wanted to take his mind off it as much as he could and get back with the football. And I just for his sake, I just hope his forward gets released and he can move on and just focus on his football. Because it is a hard thing to have in the back of your mind. Like you don't know from one day to the next if your forward's going to be released or killed or anything. So fair play to Diaz and. As I say, I just hope his forward gets released.
I mean, the one other thing to come out of that game as well was obviously the tragedy chanting. Luton have released a statement, Liverpool have released a statement, the FA are
Yeah.
working on that. I mean,
Also,
what's your thoughts on that?
I thought Luton's statement was a disgrace because they said, I don't know a word for word, but I think they said what may have been interpreted as tragedy chanting or something like that. So for me, that was a disgrace. And you're not gonna eradicate it at all out of football. It's gonna be a thing, but like in 2023, any tragedy chanting about any type of
Absolutely.
tragedy, where it be Hillsborough. I'm dropping things here. Where it be Hillsborough or Munich
You're
or
angry.
anything.
You're an angry man.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, it's nothing to do with football. That's people's lives getting joked about, and it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. I mean, on the game itself, I mean, Liverpool, it was a poor performance from Liverpool. I mean, you were speaking to me at halftime, and you said you couldn't see Liverpool scoring. And I mean,
Nope.
that's not like you or like Liverpool. They look like that. I mean, do you think that's a bit of a concerning performance? That I mean, do they lack a wee bit of balance? I think when Trent come out, when that tight pitch, Trent come inside, there wasn't a lot of room in the middle to play. I don't particularly think this McAllister thing's working out at all where he's
No,
playing.
it's
I
not.
don't think you're getting the best out of him at all, and I
It's
don't
not
think it's helping
helpful.
the team because he's not being his abilities are better shelved elsewhere, and I think that maybe Liverpool have better options. They maybe play somebody in that role. So I think he's struggling a wee bit. I think
Well,
Szoboszlai was probably the first time I've seen him. He was
no,
slightly off
he
it.
was poor.
Yeah,
Well,
and
McAllister's banned actually now for the Brentford game, so we'll see what happens there.
who?
McAllister's banned for the Brentford game
Yeah.
because so
So
we'll see what happens.
he will if they change it. And I thought Gravenberch he tried as well, but Liverpool didn't create an awful lot. Salah was off it. Nunez didn't really get on it until the second half, really, and then
They should have
Diaz
scored.
come on and changed it. Gap goal, I think, made a difference too. I think the subs from Liverpool worked pretty
I actually,
well.
I actually thought Harvey Elliott was great when he came on.
Elliot done well as well. Callum saying Luton's statement was disgraceful. Praised the atmosphere and then said it was a minority, even though Carragher mentioned it in commentary.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I mean, Carragher said after the game he still thinks Liverpool are at least two players short of being able to challenge, not even one, but just the challenge. So I think he pretty much thinks they're their team that's going to be very much fighting for top four. I mean, is that a concerning performance away to Luton, a team where everyone was expecting Liverpool to wipe the floor with them, and in the
I mean,
end there wasn't much. I mean, you couldn't. I think even Klopp said after the game, you couldn't have said Liverpool deserved they won it. And in the end, they were probably fortunate to get a draw. So, what was your thoughts on it?
as I said, I actually said to Callum at halftime, like I said, I can see this finishing 0-0. And I was saying to you throughout the game, we're not scoring, we're not going to score. And obviously we didn't end up. But like as you say, we just looked. I don't want to use it as an excuse because it's not. But we looked sort of lethargic. Like everyone was off it. Salah didn't have a great game. I thought Gravenberch was probably our best player. If you had to pick one, I thought Gomez at left back was a bad decision. Not
Because
not
again, that he was coming inside, and again they lacked that balance, didn't they?
not because of Gomez as a bad player, but I think we needed that more attacking. And I don't really rate Simicast, but he gives you more of an attacking threat than
Gomez.
Gomez. So I think I think if Klopp was to play that game again, he would probably put Tsimikas there. But as you say, for me, we're lacking an out and out defensive midfielder, and obviously we're linked with that boy Andre from Brazil. Don't know much about him. I watched him in the Copa final on Sunday, I think it was, but I've actually heard now that he's on the verge of joining Fulham apparently. So I don't know
Maybe
about
that's because Palini's moving. If they're getting that done early,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, so but we were like this last season too. We went away to all the promoted teams last season and didn't win one. I don't think we won one.
Does it concern you that away form? I mean, they did beat Newcastle, but I think not to say it was a freak because Liverpool, they defended well, but I think if you play that game 9 times out of 10 again, all in them circumstances, I don't think Liverpool. It was one of them freak days. Everything fell. Nunez putting them two away, and Newcastle didn't punish them when they had the chance to do it. But I mean, they lost to Spurs. You could say maybe unfortunate. Brighton away, they didn't play that well. They could, you couldn't have said they deserved any more than a draw there. Luton, they didn't play well. Wolves, they were battered in the first half. And there's another game too, I think. Chelsea as well. They didn't win there. So I mean, they've been brilliant at home. Every home performance has been they've wiped the floor whoever they've had. But similarly last season, that away form's not really kicked on. Is that a worry for you?
I like you have to if you want to be winning leagues, like you have to be beating teams like Luton. Like even I'm going to put Chelsea in that category. You have to be, and I know you lost them last night, but circumstances you have to be beating Chelsea like because and they're not great. And I know it was the first game of the season, but they're not a good side. And as you say, Wolves, we could have been 2-3-0 down at halftime. So the away form is a concern. But then if you flip that to the home form, it doesn't look like anyone can go and get a result.
It's like watching two different teams, but they seem to play with so much more intensity and at home, don't they?
Which kind of worries me because we know the next away game we have in the league is away to the Empty Head. So and yes, I did call it the Empty Head.
Because the way they're playing away from home, it's very hard to fancy them going there and getting a result, isn't it?
But this is the thing with Liverpool. Like, it's we could go and draw. We look no way and go and beat Man City 2-0. It's one of them things. We could go and lose to Brentford on Saturday or Sunday.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you're going to go to Man City and win, this man is going to have to be clinical. Darwin Nunez, Liverpool fans have been saying, stop hitting on Nunez, and he's coming on this season, and he has. There's no doubt he has, but a big moment away to Luton, and he's got to score. I mean, for me, he was onside, no doubt about it. Salah was onside, and that would have been reviewed if he had put the ball in the net.
I don't think it was Salah. I think it was Tsimikas that was given offside.
Well, I think the goal would have stood. I think the goal would have stood had it been given. And it's a yard out. I think again, it's one of them ones when it was harder to miss. And I says, a few weeks, but like when people say to me about Romero costing us, how long do we let this go on? How long can Liverpool sort of let these? Because it's okay missing in a game in the Europa League when you're 3 or 4-1 up. That's gonna it doesn't really cost you in the end. But eventually, I thought it was going to become a moment where he was going to miss a big opportunity in a game, and Liverpool were going to pay a penalty for it, and the penalty was 2 points. I mean, where are you at with it? Because Carragher did say he's going to have to try and find that clinical edge from somewhere. Because if Liverpool are going to win the league in the next couple of years, I think they're going to have a top number 9 up front, like Man City do, like Spurs kind of do. We saw it at the minute. They're going to have to be somebody. Not so much that I know Salah scores a lot of goals, but in big games, you're only going to get you might get 5 or 6 chances. You might get 1, maybe 2, and you need to have the 5th, and you need to have that trust in that player that when that opportunity comes, he's got a ticket. So, I mean, how do you feel about it at the moment?
I mean, I'm one, as you know, I'm one of Nunez's biggest defenders. Like, I think he is overrated, but he has to score that chance. Even if he thinks he's offside, he has to score it because it's going to go to VAR. And as Carragher said, with Nunez, I think if he has time to think about it, he misses. But if he doesn't have time to think about it and just blast it, it'll go on. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know what I'm trying to say. I think if he has time to think about what they're going to do, he gets himself muddled up. But I think, like you see with them them 2 goals he scored against Newcastle, like he didn't think about it. He just smashed it in, and then the goal he scored against Bournemouth was an absolute worldie. So it's a strange one, Nunez, but
There's no
as
doubt
I
the
see,
qualities there.
it's the consistency. It reminds me of maybe not this some, but Torres at Chelsea in a way.
Ronnie
Like
Rosenthal, maybe.
he has a not that bad, but no, I just think I don't know. It's a difficult one, Nunez, but I just love the man. What can I say?
I mean, if we get to the, I mean, the problem you've got, right, is Callum was saying to me, he still thinks he'll come good and he'll deliver in them moments, but I think it's the art of composure. You or have it or you don't, and I sense that yes, this man will score you goals, but I think he'll miss as many, and eventually he'll. I mean, next if we get to this end of the season and say he's missed 3 or 4 more of them easy chances that we're talking about, and these aren't like one on, these are like open nets. He's missing. They're not like you can say, well, the keeper's been a good. These are gilt edged chances that you would expect 10-year-olds to put them away. I mean,
Yeah,
so if we get to the
I
end
think
of the season and it's not really it's the same sort of Nunez. Yes, he scored the odd brilliant goal, but and his link up play isn't bad, but he's missing more of them easy chances. What do you think Liverpool will be looking at in the summer? Do you think they'll be looking at, right, we need to go and sign an R striker?
I don't because we'll probably lose Salah, so we'll, we'll maybe we'll sign a striker with a Salah money that can
Well,
sort of.
what would you do in January now? You know, the Cargosses are lacking in areas. I mean, do you expect Liverpool
Uh,
to be busy in January?
I expect this if we're going to sign someone. I think it's going to be a defensive midfielder. I can see it's. I think if I was to put my hat on it now, I think we'll sign a defensive midfielder in January, and then in the summer, I think depending on what happens with Salah, I think we'll definitely sign a centre back and another forward in the summer. Maybe another midfielder.
I think Polina at Fulham would suit Liverpool down the ground. You know,
Oh, I would. When Bayern were going on for him, I didn't know why we didn't. Like, if he's good enough for Bayern Munich, he's obviously good enough for Liverpool.
thought he was outstanding on a Saturday against United as well. Thought he was brilliant.
He-
Any game I've seen him, I thought he stands out in that Fulham
he-
team as being a level above the rest of the players.
yeah, you seen in that phone game too. Like, even though it was sort of his mistake that cost him the goal. Like, he just even when he's on a yellow
I
card,
think
he
he
just
was. I think he was going to get man of the match before that happened.
he was. But we'll get on to the United game in a minute because of a few words about that. But with Liverpool and Nunez, like I don't what like as a neutral fan, what would you do with what would you do with it?
It depends what your ambitions are. If you're happy to finish top 4, then fine, they'll probably do you a job and you'll score and you'll miss. But if you want to be the best team in the country, I don't think Nunez wins you a league. I just don't.
Mm,
Not unless Salah scores close to, does what Haaland did last year and scores 36, they 40 goals. But I mean, that's a lot of I mean, we look at Spurs and we've the Van de Ven injury. I think Liverpool would seriously struggle with Salah because I don't think they've got a reliable goal scorer. I know they've got players and that they've got a lot of attacking depth, but not to the level of a Salah. I think Jota will chip on, Nunez will chip on, Diaz will chip on, but I don't see any
get
one of them. I don't really see any one of them doing what Salah can do, and I think that's where
not.
Liverpool.
That's going to be the worry, isn't
Salah
it?
scored a
When
bag
we
full.
do
Salah
lose
scored a bag full last season and he only finished 5th. So that we see me Harry Kane scored a bag full, finished 8th. I think you need our players to chip on too. No, wait.
I,
So if you've got 2 or 3 of them players that can score 20 plus, I don't really see Nunez scoring 20 league goals in a season. I just don't.
what I do agree, but what I like about Nunez is even with the muscles and all that there, he gets the chances. And I know you have to be scoring them, but he doesn't let his head drop. He just does the same things, does the same, and he's one of them players that would miss 3-4 chances a game and score a hat trick as well. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, so I'm happy enough with him, and I know he's not young, but he's still relatively young. So I would still be patient with him.
Yeah, Dortmund have beaten Newcastle by 2 goals to 0. Finished about 5 months ago or so there. So
Yeah,
we'll come on
would
to
you
that.
say that's would
We'll
you
come
say
on to
that's
that in a wee
Newcastle?
minute. Well, we'll come on to that in a few minutes when we're talking
What
about
about
the European games. But I mean, before we do, we've going to look at one more game in a bit of depth. I mean, it kicked the weekend off, I suppose. I mean, set us up for a frantic weekend. I mean, this was again just maybe not as feisty, but it wasn't far off as feisty as Spurs Chelsea. I mean, these two teams were going at it, and I think if you look at it, I think to be totally honest, on the Spurs Chelsea thing, I think there's an argument now that's the biggest, dirtiest game in British football at the moment. Even more so than Celtic Rangers. I think there's red cards galore. The two teams, for whatever reason, just cannot stand each other in terms of the players and the coaches. They've all been, not that many bust ups there's been, and players. It all seems to have stemmed from the Battle of the Bridge. And I think with the Arsenal Newcastle thing, it stems from that game last year, Christmas time, when Arsenal and Newcastle, that 0-0 draw. And it's been on a knife edge ever since. And it's kind of how these things can happen. One game can have a domino effect on when you play that team again. I mean, it was feisty. These two teams from minute one just kicked lumps at each other.
It's as I said at the top of the show, like it was mental. It was just a mad weekend of like, and again we go back to we're spending most of it not talking about football. We're spending most of it talking about officials and what happens with VAR and club statements and managers.
Let's go through them before we get to that goal. I know it says 3 lives for Newcastle, and that's obviously in reference to the 3 VAR checks for the goal. But before the goal, there was a few incidents. First one being Havertz's tackle. Do you think the yellow was fair, or do you think it should have been sent off?
To me, in real time, I thought it was a red, but then I can see where the yellow was given, but for me, I think he should have.
I think it's a red card, because people are saying it's where he caught him, but he was totally out of. I mean, I think it was just lucky that they caught him where he did. I don't think he had any control over the way he dived in. So for me, I thought it was seriously dangerous, and he didn't know what he was going to do to that player. He just knew he was going to clean him.
And then you will come on to it, but like the Bruno one as well with the elbow, I think he should have gone as well.
Definite red card. How he survived that. I mean, see this Dermot Gallagher saying that it's not an elbow, it's a forearm, but I mean, how can you get away with that? It's a football match, not a boxing match.
I know it's if you do that to someone in the street, you're getting a jail sentence. Like.
And I think it's that. I think the referee, to be fair, Michael Oliver done well last night. There was a few things in the game I thought, he let a lot go, and I suppose when Spurs were under pressure, a lot of Spurs fans were unhappy, but I thought he refed it quite well. He let the game flow as much as it could, because despite him he only really blew up for when it was an obvious foul. All the 50-50s, he kind of let it go. And despite that, the ball was only in play for 23 minutes in the first half because there was that much happening. So I thought it was a very difficult game to referee. I think on Saturday, I don't think the referee refed it particularly well. I thought
who was the referee? Was it Michael Oliver?
No, he done the Spurs game. It was. Oh, he was the referee on Saturday.
I can't mind
now. Sure that well. I don't think he had control of the game at all. I think if he sends Havertz off, everything else becomes different. I think letting Havertz get away with that, it really got Newcastle up for it then. And then Newcastle had felt that, they were owed something in a way, and they were going to start trying to hurt ours, because I think there's bad tackles, and then there's the Newcastle coaching staff, fans, and players all looked at that where the Havertz tackle was unnecessary, because I mean, why did he do it? He done it because he wanted to hurt. He wanted to.
And if I remember right, it wasn't in a really dangerous area of the pitch.
No, it was in the Newcastle half on the touchline. Yeah. So I mean, he had no reason to do it. So other than they hurt the man, and I think that's where Newcastle, Bruno. Then I mean, he should have been sent off a couple of times, to be totally honest. Yeah. But I think then the referee made it difficult for himself, because when he didn't send Havertz off, it kind of became open season. Well, if he hasn't sent him off, we're not going to get sent off, and I think in the end he lost control.
That's the thing. Like, I'll come on to it. You seen my Anthony Taylor? He got demoted to the Championship last week. Made a bad mistake in that game, and now he's reffing the City Chelsea game. So there's no accountability for the refs, and I understand that it's a tough job. It is a tough job when you're reffing 22 players and managers, and you have fans screaming down your neck. But we come on to it every time. The standard of refereeing in this country or in England, just all over, is awful.
I mean, Then the goal goes on, and I mean, I was convinced it was going to be ruled out because there was so much they were checking for. I was like, they're going to find something. They ruled it out, and they didn't in the end. I mean, first of all, do you think the ball was out of play? And second, is there any way to prove it that it was out? And I mean, so if they're not sure, they can't give it. So I mean, where did you stand on that first issue? That was the first thing you checked if the ball was out of play.
I think it was on.
You think it was on? So again, I think what we have to be careful here is there's no definitive evidence that it was definitely out of play, and I think for that reason they have to stick with the on-field decision. The second one, the offside, is very difficult because it's very hard to tell when it touched them, who come off, and they didn't have the angles again. So I mean, the other thing they checked was for a foul, and this is the one that created the talking point. Really, I think this is where Arteta's rant. I think this is where it became. This is what he was really annoyed about was the foul. Well, he thought it was a foul. I mean, for you, foul or no foul? Gabriel, or Joe Winton on Gabriel.
I think it was a foul. To me, I think it was a push.
So I mean,
what about you?
The more I see it back, I think it was a foul as well. I mean, but again, as a clear and obvious, and we've talked about it before, this clear and obvious thing makes it very. I think this sometimes ties the referee's hands behind his back. But I mean, Arteta was never going to go quietly. I mean, he was absolutely fuming. I mean, do you think he crossed the line? With his interview?
But in the emotions of the game,
it wasn't like the Liverpool one where it was, it wasn't. All these things were subjective. I've heard people say I heard Gary Neville say it's not a foul. I've heard other people say it is a foul. Whereas the Diaz offside was clearly on. It was clearly onside. So I mean, for a subjective call, it went really in on the referees. And I mean, as you said, he was emotional. So, but for me, if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be looking at the bigger picture. Arsenal didn't play well in the game. They defended quite well, yes, and they competed, but they never created anything at all. I mean, so do you think he was annoyed at that as well? And that's sort of stemmed from that. That's when he went on to criticise the referee.
Quite possibly, but I've come on here a few times. I know Ed Nketiah scored a hat-trick last weekend, but I've come on here a number of times and said Arsenal are lacking just as we say about Liverpool lacking a cutthroat number 9. I think Arsenal are really lacking pretty similar, because even when Jesus is fit, he's not a player that would get you 20-25 goals either. But so I think it was probably a bit angry at his players. But for me, I do think he went a bit over the top, and I think you have to remember, as I said, I know I've criticised referees and I have done there, but at the end of the day, they are human as well, and we have to remember that. But it'll be interesting to see if he gets.
I've seen the FA today. I've actually wrote the Arsenal and Arteta looking for explanations on his interview. So I would think he's in a bit of trouble. He could very well look under the touchline ban.
If that was Klopp, he'd be getting a 10-year prison sentence.
I mean, we're talking about VAR again. It does seem to be coming up quite regularly, especially you tend to be on these Tuesday shows, and after a weekend of football, it tends to be a big talking point. VAR. I mean, we've seen Ange's interview last night, and that was kind of through out to the public as well. A lot of people having their say on that. He kind of didn't really moan about the decisions. I don't think he could in the end. I think the referee and VAR got the decisions right. But I think in the aftermath of this Luis Diaz incident, every decision now is being thoroughly checked. Because in the game last night, I was thinking all these offsides must be tight, but there was a couple of them I seen they were clearly, and they really are taking their time over these. We've seen other games where they took a lot of time to make a decision. The United game, for example, I thought that was a clear offside on Saturday, and that took 5 minutes or so.
I said during the United game at the time, I thought it was onside, but then when I looked at it again, it was offside.
I mean, so do you think we're at that breaking point in VAR where they're getting decisions wrong, obviously, that we spoke about, but also the length of time that it's taken to sort decisions out, even the right ones, that it's frustrating players, managers, fans. I mean, that was awful last night, standing around waiting for decisions. Awful.
That's the worst part about it for me. Everyone in life's going to get decisions wrong, but it's the length of time that it's taken is That annoys me more than getting decisions right or wrong.
Do you think now if they had a meeting with the 20 clubs and says we're going to vote on VAR coming out or staying in, and he put like sort of polls out the fans, what do you think the balance would be on it? Do you think a lot of people now would be that were in favor of VAR coming in would change their mind and think, do you know what, let's just go back to how it was?
I would say, for me, I would say 95% of people would say go back to how it was, because that's the way that I never wanted VAR in the first place. I don't mind it. I don't mind it for like automated offsides or something like that. That's all right. But like for all these taking 10 minutes to make a decision about a simple handball or a simple penalty decision, it's taking too long. And I was listening to someone, I can't remember who, saying like it's taking the enjoyment out of seeing your team score a goal, because if your team scores a goal, you're celebrating and you turn around 2 minutes later, no, it's offside.
I mean, do you think like why do you think it's so badly used in England that don't really hear too much about our leagues complaining about it? Europe, but in the Champions League, for example, you don't see as much controversy. World Cups, Euros. Why do you think in England we just haven't cracked it yet?
It comes down to it, as I've said, the officials aren't good enough, because it's the same officials refereeing the games and then they're on VAR the next day. It's the the referee in the Liverpool Luton game was the VAR in the Newcastle Arsenal game.
Mm,
Like it's mental.
just to finish up the roundup and then teams that are up there in the top four at the minute. I mean, I've actually spelled that wrong. So one second. That's that jet lag you see and all that Spurs stress. There
Well,
we
if it
go
was
now.
up to you,
I
would
mean,
you?
do you
If it was
think
up to
Arsenal
you, would you
Liverpool?
go to VAR?
I think we still need to try and make it better because I do think
Yeah,
if we can nail it properly, it'll help. But
yeah.
I think they really need to speed up some of these decisions. If it's clear and obvious that, for example, a player is offside, just call it as it is. I mean, they're double checking and treble checking. I know they don't want any more. I think Howard Webb says, look, we can't take any more offside errors. We need to make sure they're right, and that's why it's taking so long. But I mean, the weekend that we were speaking on the weekend about the top four teams were sort of producing a level that we hadn't seen before. With so many teams up there. But Arsenal were beat. Liverpool scrambled. They let draw with Luton. Spurs were beat. I mean, City are now top of the league and they haven't really played their best football yet. Although in their last couple of games they are starting to up their level. I mean,
Yep.
is that the worry at the minute that Man City have coasted to the top of the table and they haven't had top gear yet?
It always is a worry with City, but I don't think Arsenal and Spurs and Liverpool are that far away. I really don't. Like I still think Man City will end up winning the league this year. Like I've said that from day dot. But I don't think it's as far away as people are thinking.
I mean, I'm just looking at it now, and I suppose it's easy to do this after a defeat. But with Spurs' injuries now, Liverpool are definitely short in areas. Arsenal are lacking a goal scorer. I mean, it's very difficult unless Man City fall off a cliff or they lose a heap of players to injuries. That any of these teams are good enough. They sustain the challenge. I think on their day they're all capable, but over
Yeah.
a consistent season, I'm not
Well,
sure any of these three teams can really make a fuss of it. The Man City, if Man City are at their level.
like but at the minute, I know we have to play them and all that there, but at the minute, Spurs are what, a point off them, and Liverpool are three off them, so it's not that far away.
Hmm.
And
Let's finish off. Round up the rest of the games. This is Fulham United. Tell you what,
I
very. I
I
mean,
was
I've
one of
seen.
the
I've
worst games
enjoyed
I've watched.
football. I've enjoyed the football I've watched this weekend, and I mean, apart from that, I mean, that was an awful appetizer for the weekend.
Mm,
I mean,
that was bad.
I actually I went in shower during the second half because it was hard to watch. I wasn't enjoying it, and I mean, United in the end they scrambled a late goal in, and with results happening, it worked out very well for them. But I mean, if you're a United fan at the minute, you couldn't be enjoying the style of play, and they are really they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're
Flat.
just about getting they're just about getting by in games. So I
Yeah.
mean, what was your thoughts on that game?
I agree with everything you said. I said, dude, I text you actually a wee sleeping emoji because it was an awful game, and we've seen this with United. when they won games, it's not a good watch. They beat Burnley. They were fortunate to beat Burnley. I don't know if they were fortunate to beat Fulham or not, but it's just even when they're winning games, they're not playing good football. And we've said this countless times as well. If I was a United fan, I wouldn't be too excited about what I'm seeing. Obviously, they're going to Copenhagen tomorrow night, so that's I would say you would say must not lose, but it's a must not. It is a must not lose at this point because I think if they lose tomorrow, I'd say it's curtains for their Champions League campaign.
I mean, Brentford beat West Ham in a thrower 3-2. West Ham seem to be really struggling when they go away from home as well. I mean, that was probably the pick of the 3 o'clock games in terms of drama and entertainment. I mean, great goal from Kudos. He looks like a
Seen
great,
it.
great find. What do you think of that game?
Obviously, I didn't see it, but I seen the highlights, and
More so the
as
result,
you said,
and
West Ham sort of started the season well, and they've sort of stumbled a bit. I think they've lost their last 3 league games, haven't they?
Atletico just went 1-0 up against Celtic. Griezmann,
So,
fantastic strike. So Celtic will be under
seen that
pressure
there.
now. Do you know what? I thought this was the weekend for Burnley, but they didn't really turn up at all against Crystal Palace at home, and all of a sudden, I know we'll come on to Sheffield. They got a one, but them three teams at the bottom, along with Bournemouth, are starting to be cut adrift.
I think I've said this. If well, it was a nice goal. I think if any of them 3 teams stay up, I think it will be Luton.
Surprising not the one that when you think about it, because
Mm,
they haven't spent anything, but they just seem to have a lot more resilience than them
yeah.
R2 teams.
And they don't have a lot of quality, but they have a bit of quality. Like they have Ross Barkley,
Well organized as well.
uh, they have Ross Barkley, and they have that wee man who scored against us. Chong, I think his name was, used to play for United.
Yeah.
So I think
Um,
I think if any of the 3 teams stay up, I think it'll be them.
Everton and Brighton drew one each. I mean, Everton have really turned a corner, and I mean, barring any points deduction, they look to be safe.
And I'd say even with a points deduction, they could be safe anyway.
And Brighton, not really kicked on from the highs of last season. Obviously, European football. It's been difficult for them, hasn't it? With the amount of games they're having to play.
It's their first season in Europe, so even if they do struggle this season, like you would give the Zerbi a break. And as well they probably lost their 2 best players in the summer, so it's been tough for Brighton.
Yeah. City put 6 past Bournemouth. I mean, Doku, we one of them. I think he got
The
himself in the history on very few players have had 5 contributions in a game, 1 goal, 4 assists.
he
And I
looks
mean,
like
he looks like a fantastic piece of business.
I Liverpool were actually linked with him for years, but we never really seemed to do nothing about it. And so they've obviously thought that he would fit their team, and he's fit on like a glove, really, hasn't he?
We'll come on to Bournemouth when we look ahead to the weekend's games, but I think a lot of managers this week are going to be under serious pressure going into this last international break because it is a time when teams do tend to change managers if they're not doing well. Sheffield United got a lit penalty against Wolves. They won 2-1. Yet again, Gary O'Neill was furious. It looked very, very soft to me. I mean, what was
I
your
did-
thoughts on that?
I didn't see it.
You haven't seen it? Well, very
Mm.
soft. I mean, big one for Sheffield. It gets them off the board, on the board in terms of ones.
Still can't see
And
them doing anything really.
no, I can't. But I mean, it probably just about might save Paul Heckenbottom's job. That goal.
At least until after the international break.
Yeah. And the final game we haven't talked about was Nottingham Forest against Villa. I mean, Villa were flying, but like kind of like wouldn't say like yous, but where they've been very very strong at home and they've blitzed anyone they've played at home, but away from home they tend to struggle. So I mean, where are you at with Aston Villa? Can you see them out in a top 4 challenge, or do you think that's a step too far?
It would be a step too far, I think, but like it seems to be if teams do well in Europe, fifth could get you Champions League, so they could be aiming for that. Even if it doesn't, they'll get you into the Europa League. But I did watch this game and I wasn't impressed with Martinez. He had a howler of a game.
He does have a per game. Let's look ahead to the games. Obviously, there's been a few tonight, and ones have just started there. And we've got games tomorrow night and Thursday as well. But I mean, we start off in Newcastle because they have lost 2-0 away to Dortmund. I mean, that leaves them on 4 points after 4 games. We PSG away and AC Milan at home next.
They're another team that's got injuries at the moment.
PSG away, and then it's home to Milan. A lot of injuries. And he did have a couple of chances, but I mean, from what you told me in the first half, it was all Dortmund, and the end Dortmund really should have scored more. So
yeah.
I think in the end, it's proven to be too hard to balance with injuries between Premier League, Champions League. I think at home they're a very different team again. They're another team at home where you think they can beat anybody, but away from home, it's just a different. It's like watching two different teams, isn't it?
Do you think they'll drop into the Europa, or do you think they'll drop out entirely?
Well, I'm just checking to see the groups here. Well, PSG's actually just went 1-0 up away to Milan. So, I mean, if PSG won that game tonight, that'll be them on 9 points, Dortmund on 7, Newcastle on 4, and AC Milan on 2. That's going to be very difficult because PSG will know that if they beat Newcastle, they'll have topped the group and they'll not be able to be caught, I think. So they'll be out. They try and do that, and then I think very much it's going to be it's a shootout between Newcastle and Milan. Now, I think if PSG do beat Milan tonight, Milan's hopes of qualifying are all but over. So I think that last game becomes a third place playoff game. And you probably would fancy Newcastle. They might only have to draw the game as well. So I think there's a good chance they finish third.
I would hope it was Milan that dropped down, to be fair.
You would lie, because Newcastle would be a threat, wouldn't they, in that Europa League?
I think so.
I mean, Celtic have just kicked off there 10 minutes ago, but they're already 1-0 down, and I think a defeat tonight would have them knocked out.
Are they last or are they third?
They would be knocked out. They would be defeated with because Feyenoord and Lazio are playing each other. So if Celtic lose tonight, that'll be it for them. They'll just be playing for third place, and even that looks difficult now. I mean, do you think this group's just exposed Celtic again? They're just nowhere near the level of the other teams.
It's like when Celtic and Rangers go to Europe, it's just a different level of football, and they always seem to struggle. I know Rangers got the Europa League final a couple of seasons back, but apart from that, they've both struggled. Going back to Newcastle, actually, if they do drop down the Europa League, I think they don't actually go into the knockout stages. I think they go into like a playoff first.
There's a 16 teams that go into the playoff and the 8 go through, don't they? Something like that.
Yeah, which is weird.
They would have to play. They actually would play a team that finishes second in the Europa League group. So depending on who that is, that could be tricky, or it could be you'd fancy them depending on who the opposition is. Because I mean, if they were to play second in whoever finishes second in your group, I don't think they would have any issues.
No, I think if we won on Thursday, we're through. So,
and that would be the aim, wouldn't it? To try and get it wrapped up now as early as possible.
Because then for the last 2 group games, we could just play the children basically.
Oh, it was almost 2-0 there. Atletico or ripping Celtic apart here. I mean, moving on to Wednesday night's games. Big game for United away to Copenhagen. Again, it's a must-win. How do you see that going?
Again, I think they'll just about nick it, but I don't think it'll be pretty. I would say 1-0 United. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost.
Arsenal at home to Sevilla. How about that game?
I'd say Arsenal won that comfortably.
And then obviously you were saying Thursday night, you just hope they get the points and that'll be used. I mean, I think if he's won that game on Thursday, it's not just he's have won the group as well, haven't he?
We've won the group, so we'll most likely get an easier draw in the knockouts. I think.
What do you do for the last 2 games then? If you're Klopp, do you just send out the youth teams?
For me, that's what I would do, because we have, like, if we qualify, we can just coast for the last 2 games. Doesn't really matter if you lose them. So I would just play whoever.
Yeah, we've got another big weekend of football coming up in the Premier League. Before that international break, these 4-week windows they do seem to fly in, and then it drags for about 10 days. But I mean, very, very tight at the top of the table. But we do start with a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, and that is Wolves against Spurs. I mean, it's going to be a test to see now how Spurs can cope. Without players. Wolves are obviously missing Pedro Neto, probably their best player too, and they have just lost to Sheffield United. But they've made it difficult when they've played the better teams this season, like Man City and Liverpool. So I mean, and United too, to be fair to them. So
Yeah.
this won't be easy for Spurs. How do you see that game going Saturday?
You're not going to like this, but I think I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Do you know what? I'll be interested to see how Spurs respond, but I think we'll be okay in this game. I think it's the other games I'll be worried about, but
What's your prediction?
Do you know what? I think it might seem silly because it's Wolves, but I think if Spurs were to go there and won on Saturday, it would be their biggest result this season. I really, really do.
There's a VAR check in the Chelsea game or the Celtic game for a penalty.
Was there?
I think it's for Celtic. Not been given.
Not been given. And then moving on to 3 o'clock, Arsenal take on Burnley. How do you see it? I mean, Arsenal be fancying the chances they won that.
I'm going to go 3-0 Arsenal, comfortable. I think I don't know. I think companies on finesse, you know.
Aye. Well, it'll be interesting to see what they do if they're beat. Like we said, I think he'll be one of the managers under pressure in that international break. Crystal Palace take on Everton. Everton turned a corner, definitely, under Sean Dyche. And Palace as well. Not playing great, but they're getting results when they have to against the teams around them. So I don't think that'll be a great watch.
No, who's at home?
Crystal Palace.
I still fancy Everton. I'm going to go 2-1 Everton.
Man United against Luton. Again, this will be a terrible watch. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see what Luton do when they go there. I mean, do you think there's a chance they might sense they can get something?
Hey, why not? They got something against Liverpool, and we're a much better team than United. But we United being at home, I think they'll win 3-1.
Bournemouth against Newcastle's a 5:30 game. Bournemouth, as we says, an our manager, I think, is under serious pressure. I think if they lose heavily in that game, it might be the end. But Newcastle, as we says, are fighting it difficult to balance that Premier League Champions League and going away from home. They don't tend to be as good. So do you think that's a potential opportunity for Bournemouth to maybe try and get a result?
It is, but you would still fancy Newcastle, wouldn't you? So I'm going to go Newcastle 3-0.
You know, 2 o'clock games on Sunday. First one, Aston Villa against Fulham. Villa at home are just different level compared to when they go away. So would you expect that run of home ones to continue?
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-0 Villa.
Brighton taking on Sheffield United. Brighton will be looking to get back on the winning trail again, and they'll probably see this as a great opportunity.
Again, I fancy Brighton easily. I'm going to go 3-0 Brighton.
Liverpool take on Brentford. A big game for Liverpool to try and get 3 points in. At home, Brentford, they'll go there and they'll make it difficult, but you would imagine Liverpool would have too much at home.
If we were away from home, I would probably predict a draw, but since we're being at home, I think we'll win 2-0.
West Ham, Nottingham Forest is a live 2 o'clock game.
Why is that live?
I'm not sure. I mean, I probably would prefer to watch any of them or three, but West Ham seem to be on TV quite a lot.
They were on last Sunday against Everton, this Sunday against Villa, and the next Sunday against.
They were on during a week there too against Arsenal on the cup. But how do you see them? I mean, Forest are a very, very strong home team, but again, they're another team away from home. They look completely different.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw here.
Do you think is David Moyes under any pressure? I mean, a lot of West Ham fans aren't happy with the style of play. Apparently, they played quite decent against Brentford, but then once they got in front at half time, 2-1 up, he says, let's park a bus. Eventually, they were broke down. So, I mean, he's a very negative type of manager.
Moyes always seems to be under some sort of pressure with West Ham. If they're not performing well, it's all get Moyes out. But then they want
I've heard from their fans that the style of play is unwatchable, and they says they actually prefer when they're losing games, or not losing games, but when they're 1-0 down because they have to come out and play, and they've got the ability to play. He says once we go 1-0 up, he just parks 2 buses.
It's if for a neutral, like I don't look out to watch West Ham games. I'll tell you that.
And the final game before the international break sees Chelsea take on Man City 4:30 live in Sky. That'll be entertaining because we'll see where Chelsea are at. Can they follow up that result they got at Spurs? We have one against Man City, or will Man City just be far too strong?
I fancy Man City. They won 4-0. I'm gonna go for I think
Do you
they're.
think Pochettino will be under serious pressure if City go there and 1-4? Do you think that Spurs result buys him time?
I think Spurs will buy some time. I think when we were predicting I think when we were last time I was on, we were predicting the points. I said Chelsea would get 1 point, so they've got 3 so far.
Uh, I mean, there is a scenario that, well, there's definitely one. I mean, if Spurs won, they're going back top on Saturday. So, but I mean, if it could look a lot better for Spurs if they go to Wolves and won, and say Chelsea hold City to a draw. They'll be top of the table looking at that international break again, and then you'll have to listen to me say it's back on.
I think it's going to be a tight season over. Like I think from now to May, as I say, I think Man City will win it, but I don't think there'll be a lot of points on it.
Mm. Oh, and thanks very much for coming on. We got
Not
through
about
quite a lot there. Probably more. I enjoyed that because it was a wee bit of therapy for me. I've had a well between traveling and whatever the match and stuff. I'm quite tired, but no, it's good to do. Always good to do a show with you because you always you've a lot to say, so it makes it easy for me. I will be back later on this week. Looking forward to them games at the weekend before the dreaded international break. Which will probably see Stephen Kenny's last couple of games as Ireland manager.
Thank
But
God.
if you're new around here, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. Owen, thanks very much, and I'll
No
see you
bother.
soon.
See you after.